Despite Bryce Young leading a comeback win against the Saints on Sunday, Dave Canales is still not ready to say who will be the starter on Sunday versus the Giants in Munich. Will it be Young? Will it be Andy Dalton? Or is this all gamesmanship? We'll break it all down right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Wednesdays throughout the entirety of the regular season, I'm right here answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council to get your questions in for tomorrow's edition of the weekly Wednesday mailbag. And understanding there is a trade deadline on Wednesday, which means that we may have to break down some Panther trades. But if there are not very many trades or no trades at all, we'll be right there. Full show of the mailbag. Either way, get those questions into me by either adding me or DMing me on Twitter at Julian Council. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. The Panthers coming off of a 23-22 win against the Saints on Sunday, now heading to Munich on Thursday to face off against the Giants on Sunday afternoon at the Allianz Arena. And still wondering who is going to be the quarterback in this game, as Dave Canales, Carolina Panthers head coach, met with the media on Monday, as he does following every Carolina Panthers game played on a Sunday, and was asked about who's going to start. Is it going to be Andy Dalton or is it going to be Bryce Young? And he says, we have not made a decision. We're working through it right now. Still just trying to make sure we think about all the things that go into it, make sure that we're on the same page. We'll make a decision in a couple of days. So we don't know. Even though Bryce Young played one of his best games as a Panther, even though Bryce Young is under contract next year and still possibly could be the franchise quarterback in Carolina, even though the Panthers gave up DJ Moore, the number 1 overall pick, a second-round pick next year, and all those assets to get Bryce Young, we still don't know whether Bryce Young, not Andy Dalton, is going to start on Sunday against the Giants. It is a tad annoying that this is happening and that this has been a weekly question of whether it's going to be Andy Dalton or Bryce Young. Even when Andy Dalton was playing well, Dave Canales is getting questions about Bryce Young getting an opportunity. And now Bryce Young started the last 2 games playing well on Sunday and that win. And Dave Canales is still getting these questions about whether Bryce is still going to be the quarterback or if he's going back to Andy Dalton, the guy he clearly has preferred over Bryce Young throughout this entire process. But because of the injury, suffering that car accident 2 weeks ago, he's been forced to go back to Bryce Young the last 2 weeks and forced to be asked these questions of whether he's sticking with Bryce or going back to Andy Dalton. It's all just so exhausting that we're doing this. They're 2-7. There's nothing to be gained by going back to Andy Dalton. He's not going to rip off 8 straight wins and the Panthers go 10-7 and make the playoffs. It's not going to happen. He's not going to be the quarterback next year. He's 37 years old. We know who Andy Dalton is. We're still trying to find out who Bryce Young is and can be here in Carolina and here in the NFL. So why do all this? Well, it's a couple of things why you could do all this. The Giants have to figure out who to prepare for. Why tell the Giants on Monday when you can wait till Wednesday when you're actually back out there on the practice field to let the Giants know and the media know and the world know who you're going to actually play and give them less time to prepare for Bryce Young or for Andy Dalton, as if like that's that big of a competitive advantage in the first place, considering how Bryce and Andy Dalton have both played so far this season in Carolina. But I understand it. Gamesmanship, you don't want to play your hand early on in the week when you don't have to do it until at least Wednesday when everyone's going to be out there. They're going to see who the starting quarterback is. It's not going to be very easy to hide at that point in time. So I get it from that perspective. There's also Something else to be considered, the trade deadline is on Tuesday. Are the Panthers going to trade Bryce Young? And if they are, well, this is no longer a conversation of who's going to start on Sunday. It's going to be Andy Dalton because he would still be on the roster. The Panthers may still be open to moving on from Bryce by 4 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday afternoon at the NFL trade deadline. But there's also other factors about development and next year. And Dave Canales was asked about that. He said that those things go into play and they're factoring him in, but he's focused on going to Germany and playing the Giants and not answering any of these questions about who's actually going to be the starting quarterback. Let me just say this pretty clearly. If he goes back to Andy Dalton, this organization is done with Bryce Young. Flat out done. And I saw what Adam Schefter put out there on Sunday morning about Anthony Richardson and just the history of quarterbacks that get benched and whether they are able to stay with those teams or get traded. He said, based on history, this looks like the beginning of the end of Anthony Richardson's time in Indianapolis. From 2000 to 2022, there were 66 quarterbacks selected in a first round of the NFL draft, and 25 of those quarterbacks were benched at some point while on their rookie contract. Mitch Trubisky is the only one who started a playoff game or was selected to the Pro Bowl with the team that drafted him after being benched per ESPN researchers. So I quote tweeted that, said, apply this to Bryce Young. He'll get an opportunity again on Sunday, which he did in that win against the Saints. But history says his time is done in Carolina. If after being benched, getting an opportunity to start against Denver, winning against New Orleans, and one of the best games he's played so far as a Panther in his 2 years here, if he gets benched after all of that for a player in Andy Dalton who had a great week one against the Raiders when he started, was good against Cincinnati, but since then hasn't really been that much of a difference maker and played a big role in the loss against Atlanta with that interception. If they go back to him, they're done with Bryce. At least as long as Dave Canales is here. And knowing how volatile the owner is, who knows how long Dave Canales is going to be here in Carolina. But they bench Bryce Young again for Andy Dalton on Sunday for the Giants game. They're done with Bryce. They just are. I just don't know how you could argue that it's still about development and that he's going to get another chance if they bench him after the way he played on Sunday. He was decisive in his decision-making. He let it rip on that 3rd and 10, that 26-yard gain Xavier Legette that helped him out on that final drive to go up and win the game. He did not turn it over. It was Legette who turned it over. He made good decisions. He improved the operation of the offense from what we saw at Denver to when they played on Sunday. Why not continue that development? This may be much ado about nothing because it could be the gamesmanship factor and that Dave is going to stick with Bryce. And he did say he had not had a conversation as of 2:30 when he was sitting there on Monday afternoon speaking to the media, had not spoken to Bryce Young or to Andy Dalton about who is going to start. They're going to take their time, listen, I'm sure, trade offers, have conversations with the owner, with the rest of the coaching staff, with the brain trust and Brant Tillis, Dan Morgan, and himself, Dave Canales, and figure out who the guy should be. But we know who it should be. It should be Bryce Young. We're 2-7. There's nothing to be gained by going back to an aging quarterback who's not going to be here next year. It's insane, but that's where we're at. Now, when asked about how Bryce Young played on Sunday, Dave Canales came out and said he thought that it was great, how he played, just Bryce being out there, just playing more football, taking more steps, being out there with that group of receivers and just getting the chemistry of how guys are going to respond to different coverages, different leverages to see the guys who can make plays for him and for Bryce to take advantage of some of those opportunities just to flow the offense. There was a lot of great improvement in that regard. And even in that statement, when you listen to his tone, it didn't really sound like a big endorsement that Bryce Young would continue to be the quarterback in Carolina. Maybe that's intentional, not trying to let Brian Daboll and the Giants know who they're going to play, is as if it matters that much, considering the quarterback play the Panthers have gotten this year from Dalton and from Bryce Young. But when asked, didn't really have a lot of glowing things to say. And you saw the locker room video put out there on social media yesterday. Wasn't like there was anything glowing about Bryce Young in that moment either. I don't think this guy's a fan. And everything you see from his actions, from his demeanor, from what he says, we'll see what he does. I will not be a fan of the move if they go back to Andy Dalton. I'm sure a lot of y'all will not be the fans of the move either. But we'll see what they decide to do. A couple other things before we move on to talk about the trade deadline and some guys who potentially could be on their way out of Carolina by 4 p.m. on Tuesday. Speaking of the trade deadline, Dave Canales is just letting Dan Morgan and Brant Tillis handle those things. He said that he'll be brought in some of those conversations later on just to be kept abreast of things. But other than that, he's focused on the Giants and flying to Munich and not naming who the quarterback's going to be until at least I would think Wednesday when he next speaks to the media. Jonathan Brooks' return potentially happening this week. He said critical decision for them to make on Wednesday on Brooks. Now, that'll be the end of his 21-day practice window. The Panthers either have to activate him to the active roster or he's going to be out for the rest of the season. I don't think he's going to be out the rest of the season. They can activate him. Does not mean he'll be playing on Sunday. Now, David Newton of ESPN.com did a report on Sunday that the Panthers expect for Jonathan Brooks and DJ Woonem to make their season debuts against the Giants on Sunday afternoon there in Germany. Jaden Crumedy, also another player where they have to make a decision as far as his window. Are they going to redshirt him effectively the rest of the season and keep him on IR, or are they going to bring him up onto the active roster and give him a chance? Those two guys got to make a decision on them. Adam Thielen, DJ Woonem, both are trending towards being ready, but they have to give them some time at practice again to make sure that's exactly what they want to do. Thielen, another player who could potentially be on his way out of Carolina come Tuesday afternoon if the Panthers do decide to make that trade. And Jeremy Fowler, I want to put this one out there about the conversation when it comes to quarterbacks and whether the Panthers would go back to Andy Dalton. He did report on Saturday that he talked to some people with the team who believe Andy Dalton will get another chance once his thumb is completely healed, while opposing teams feel Carolina should stick with Young, having nothing to lose. Yeah, opposing teams got it right. People inside the building, though, who were talking to Jeremy Fowler, ESPN NFL Insider, believe that Dalton will get another chance. And I felt like it last week. Just the way Bryce played, it wasn't spectacular enough to the point where, yeah, you got to stick with that guy. And just the way that Canales is going about things, and now he's had opportunities throughout this period of time to say maybe Bryce will come back. He's endorsed Andy Dalton every single step of the way up until now, where didn't really want to get into it. He was asked again on Monday, does Andy Dalton give him the best opportunity to win? Didn't want to answer that question. So we'll see what they decide to do. And then one final thing, which is actually so funny to me. Mike Jackson's been a starter at corner opposite of J.C. Horn all season long since Dane Jackson went out with a hamstring injury, missed the first 5 games, came back, then had to miss another game. The hamstring was out there on Sunday playing. But Mike Jackson is officially CB2 here in Carolina. So at the very least, Canales is willing to name the starting cornerback opposite of J.C. Horn. But if you want to know who the starting quarterback in Carolina is going to be, well, you're going to have to wait until Wednesday and possibly have to wait for the next coming weeks as we continuously go through this merry-go-round of, is it Bryce? Is it Andy? We don't know because he refuses to answer. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. All I know is I'm exhausted and I just want to have one quarterback be the guy the rest of the way, and that one quarterback be Bryce Young, as those are 8 games to evaluate, 8 games to figure out, should he be the guy in 2025, or are we pressing the reset button yet again here in Carolina? Trade deadline is tomorrow, and the Panthers may be pressing the reset button on a couple of positions. We'll talk about some of the guys that could be on their way out of Carolina based off of some of the NFL insider reporting recently, and whether that makes sense for the team, we'll see. We'll talk about it here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Football season is back, and the best way to get to games this fall is with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And I don't know if you are flying out to Munich and you don't have a ticket yet, but Game Time, go check it out. Great deals. Can see where you're going to sit in Allianz Arena. Go over there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's number. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place your live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And we don't know who's going to start on Sunday for the Panthers as of this recording. And I wonder how FanDuel feels about it. I saw it was at 5.5. It is now down to the Panthers being 4.5-point underdogs facing the Giants on Sunday, plus 190 money line, and the over-under is set at 4.5. Daniel Jones will also get to start on Sunday against his hometown team, the Charlotte Latin Hawk, former Duke Blue Devil. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more of FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Trade deadline is at 4 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon. More importantly for your boy, as I'm flying out to Munich, I'm recording this on Monday afternoon following the press conference that Dave Canales just had. I'm flying out here in about 5.5 hours. My flight got delayed, which has actually been really nice because Monday I was scrambling, trying to get all my stuff done for NASCAR, get this podcast done, do Lockdown NFL earlier with my boy Tony Wiggins. And I was just like, man, I don't have time to do all this. And I saw the delay. I was like, great. But more importantly for your boy, as far as trade deadline, 10 p.m. over in Munich. So going to be a long day on Tuesday as I'm now slated to get in at 11:10 a.m. And they tell you to stay up and just move around. Don't go to sleep. Got to get on their time. So it's going to be a long day. And hopefully the Panthers have some action. Maybe not. So I don't have to record a show there. But we're likely going to do it. So excited to see what happens. But looking at a couple of players that could be on the trade block as we are on that day, as you're likely listening to this on Tuesday or watching it on YouTube the night before. The NFLPA public salary cap report has the Panthers with $2 million of salary cap space. Over the cap has them with a little bit less, but the NFLPA public salary cap report a little bit more accurate as far as that goes. But looking at it, Bryce Young, just talked about him. Is he going to start on Sunday? Canales says it's part of gamesmanship. It's also that they haven't made a decision. They want to take in all the factors. One of the factors is they may be trading Bryce Young away. Now, Diana Rossini of The Athletic put this out there on Saturday saying it's no surprise the Panthers continue receiving multiple calls from teams interested in trading for former number 1 overall pick Bryce Young. At this time, Carolina is not considering moving the quarterback who is starting Sunday against the Saints. The Panthers were encouraged by his improvements and overall commitment to the team and his return to the field last week. I do expect the team will assess everything this offseason, make a decision on Young's future in Carolina. NFL executive around the league believe if Carolina decides to trade him, they'll get a better deal by waiting until offseason. Anyway, so there we go. Bryce Young should not be on a trade block. The Panthers don't really benefit by doing it right now, according to literally everyone around the league, who is also telling them, you should play Bryce Young for the final 8 games instead of going back to Andy Dalton, even though a source within the building believes Andy Dalton will get another chance to start for Carolina, which I hate if that is actually something believed by someone and something that ends up happening here in Carolina. It needs to be Bryce Young. I don't care. If Bryce Young goes out there and puts up a stinker against the Giants, bye week, work with him. He starts against the Chiefs. Don't care if he stinks then. He plays against the Cowboys, plays against the Eagles, the Cardinals, the Bucks twice, and I think that's the remaining schedule for Carolina. He needs to play all those games, man. I guess Atlanta one more time, right? He needs to be playing. You're not going to figure, even if he shows you he's not the guy, the season's already over. What good does it do you going back to Andy Dalton? Are the guys really going to be that upset if Bryce is out there not giving him a chance to win in a season where they're not winning anyways? Early on in the year, totally get it. And we saw from those first 2 games, especially that week 3 win against Las Vegas, Canales' judgment that he made from the way that the way players reacted. But since then, I don't see how he can be justified when you hear from Robert Hunt saying Bryce looks confident, when you hear from Chuba Hubbard saying Bryce did his ass off. Those guys respect in the locker room for Bryce Young, where a year ago, he was handed the job. Understand, just in the same way Mingo was handed the job as wide receiver 3. They weren't ready. They should have sat, especially Bryce Young. And going into this year, after those guys watched Bryce, probably saw points of times where we weren't out there as a media, because I was out there for training camp. We don't get to see all the practices after that and everything that Bryce does. There's a limited sample size throughout the offseason, what we get to see. And they saw a lot of it. And they came out of that apparently believing Andy Dalton was the best quarterback for them. And they were right when looking at the game week 3 and the game week 4. But since then, we've seen that maybe he's not. And maybe Bryce actually can be. And all he needed was a reset, more time to develop, and actually getting opportunity and getting coaching and a coach that believes in him, which I still don't know whether he has a coach and a play caller and Dave Canales who believes in what he can do. But the Panthers are much better served keeping Bryce Young the rest of the year and just hoping and working with him to see him be the guy, where that's the reason why Dave Canales was hired in the first place. If Canales benches Bryce again and goes Andy Dalton, then what's his point here? Like, what purpose does he serve when there's a lot of people calling for Brad Idzik, who has no experience as a play caller, to take over those duties from Dave Canales? So that's just my thing, man. Keep Bryce the rest of the year, starting the rest of the year, reevaluate everything after the season, after you have all those data points. But right now, makes no sense, according to me and all the people around the league who believe the Panthers are better served to continue to play him and see what they got and likely get a better return after this year. Because even if Bryce doesn't play well, you're going to say to me, oh, it's going to only bring down his trade value. Will it? Or will teams look at Carolina and see that Deontay Johnson's no longer here, that they have a makeshift offensive line at points in times like they had on Sunday, where Cade Mays played really well. Brady Christensen played pretty well as well at left tackle. And they're going to look at the fact that they have Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker and David Moore as his top receivers. If Adam Thielen's no longer here, they're going to look at that situation. They're going to look at the Panthers, going to look at the owner and be like, you know what? Yeah, the kid's got limitations. Yeah, there's some concerns about him and the way he played at Carolina, but also look at it. It's Carolina. Like there's going to be someone out there who says exactly that same thing after the year. So no, don't trade Bryce. Keep him around. If you want to move on after these next 8 games, after the season, then by all means, that's what they got to do. Jadeveon Clowney, Ian Rappaport put this out there on Sunday morning saying Panthers edge rusher Jadeveon Clowney might not be on the move as it once seemed. Holding a 2-year contract, 31-year-old disruptor would be of interest as more than just a 1-year rental. Yet at this point, it appears more likely than not he stays in Carolina. I mean, no one else in the offseason was interested in signing this guy. It's like a 2-year deal and having him for 2 years. Only the Panthers were willing to give him the kind of deal that he got because the Panthers were desperate. And he so far has 1 sack, 6 pressures. The other edge rusher, a lot of teams, namely Detroit, are looking at is Zadarius Smith, who's with the Browns. He has 5 sacks, 9 pressures this season, according to Pro Football Reference, who does not credit players a lot for sacks. I know PFF does, but PFF also doesn't really, it can be different how they credit people for certain things. But Zadarius Smith is a better player than Jadeveon Clowney. And if you're looking for an edge rusher to change things to your team, I don't know if he's that guy. Now, he did make a spectacular play on Sunday to be able to get that pressure. Charles Harris got the sack, and that helped the Panthers put New Orleans behind the sticks on that final drive where they eventually got off the field with a terrible play call by Clint Kubiak, but a great play by Mac Jackson, who knew exactly what Cedric Wilson was going to do from their time spent together back in Dallas with the Cowboys. But Clowney appears to be sticking around. I really wonder whether they're going to keep him next year or not. Can't really say there's a benefit to keeping him, and can't really say there's that big of a benefit to not keeping him other than the salary cap. We'll let things play out here and see where they want to make that move. But according to Rappaport, that's not something they want to do. Dana Rossini of The Athletic saying that as for the rest of the roster, when also talking about Bryce Young, that teams believe Carolina is opening to moving running back Miles Sanders and edge Jadeveon Clowney. We will see there. Adam Thielen, Jonathan Jones on the NFL Today on CBS. He's their lead NFL insider. He reported on Sunday that the Panthers could potentially move Adam Thielen. He's one of the receivers that could likely be on the move, like Mike Williams, someone who took a visit to Carolina this offseason, and things have not worked out with him for the Jets. So that's a good thing the Panthers didn't sign him, even though the guy they did trade for is no longer here anymore in Deontay Johnson. Thielen, 34 years old, has not played since that Week 3 game against the Raiders. That great touchdown catch he had right before the half with the hamstring was doubtful this past Sunday. You wonder the last 2 weeks, has it been more of the Panthers just wanting to wait until the trade deadline to decide to play him again, or if he really is trying to get back with that hamstring injury. Was great last year. Had to be because no one else was. Would love it for him to get another opportunity elsewhere. He's not a part of the future here in Carolina anyways. They're probably better served having guys like Legette and Coker right now get all those reps, and JT Sanders stepped up on Sunday too. Like, I'd rather see those guys see the ball the next couple of games than really see Adam Thielen getting it. But if Thielen's going to be out there here in Carolina, he can be a veteran presence, and of course he can help out Bryce Young or Andy Dalton, whoever ends up being the quarterback moving forward. So that's a guy who could be traded. Miles Sanders as well, and David Newton have put this out there that the Panthers expect to have Jonathan Brooks debut. And Dave Canales said that they got a decision to make on Wednesday where he'll likely be activated and he'll be on pace to debut on Sunday in Munich. They don't need Miles Sanders, who has 36 rushing attempts this season compared to 26 passing targets. They've been using him more as a receiving back than an actual running back, who they have Chuba Hubbard, and they're going to have Jonathan Brooks pretty soon. So they can find a team who can take on the rest of that deal, or if they got to pay it like they did with Deontay Johnson, if they can get a decent pick back, which can't imagine they're going to get a lot back from Miles Sanders, that's a move that you want to make. And then Jonathan Mingo's another name I've seen mentioned. 1 catch on 5 targets for 1 yard the past 4 weeks since Jalen Coker basically took a spot. It's just sad to see. I do feel bad for the guy. He never should have been taken in the second round. I was told that some people in the building last year had a 4th round grade on Mingo, and Scott Fitterer took him in the second round. And this is where we're at. He's just not ready. He's not a good player right now. Maybe he will be one day, but it's not going to happen in Carolina based off what we've seen last season and what we've seen so far this season. An undrafted free agent who was a better player than him in college, by the way. College production has to matter. He didn't produce at Ole Miss. Shouldn't be a shock he's not producing in the NFL. And he played in the SEC, a great league. Jalen Coker produced in college. Maybe in a Patriot League, maybe at Holy Cross, but the dude produced. And he got to play a couple of big-time schools. I mean, Boston College is not necessarily big time, but still P4 school. Play well in that game. So we're seeing his adjustment has been far greater than the one Jonathan Mingo made. Everybody's different, but it's not worked out for him. This is a different staff than the one that drafted him. As far as coaching staff offensively, his time in Carolina is not going to be much longer if he does not get traded. I just don't see him being on the team next year if he ends up sticking around the rest of the year. So Jonathan Mingo, Miles Sanders, Adam Thielen, Jadeveon Clowney, the 4 realistic trade candidates. Bryce Young, don't see that happening. I don't think it makes any sense right now. Better to wait to the rest of the end of the season and the offseason to do that than to make that decision right now. But Clowney, wouldn't mind seeing it happen. Wouldn't really be the upset if it didn't happen. Thielen would love for him to get a better opportunity. Miles Sanders, that really should happen. And Mingo, yeah, he's got to go at some point in time. Why not try to get something for him if you can? Keys to victory. Do it every Friday heading into that Sunday's matchup. And on Tuesdays, we review those keys to victory. We'll do that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I'd like to shout out my mom and my dad today for always supporting me. This month is all about gratitude, and along with the people I just shouted out, there's another person we don't get to thank enough, ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we are trying our best to make sense of everything, and in this crazy world, that isn't easy. Here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. On Fridays, I give you my 3 keys to victory for the Panthers heading to that Sunday's matchup. And here on Tuesdays, we review the keys to victory and how the Panthers did on Sunday. And of course, 23-22, get that win, break the 5-game losing streak, and get Dennis Allen fired. Bryce Young and the Panthers sent Dennis Allen to the unemployment line. He'll be fine. Guy's got millions of dollars. It's unfortunate. It didn't work out for him in New Orleans. I am always empathetic to those coaches who, their dreams be a head coach and have success. It did not work for him in Las Vegas, or I guess Oakland back then with the Raiders. Did not work with him in New Orleans. And one can wonder, should he have ever gotten the opportunity? And would he have gotten the opportunity had Sean Payton not quit on the Saints? But he did. Didn't work out. He had Jameis. He got hurt. Had Andy. That didn't really work out. And then he's had Derek Carr. No one's surprised that Derek Carr is not great. And, well, he's no longer the head coach. But they're keeping Mickey Loomis for the meantime, and that's great for the Panthers. The Saints just keep kicking the can down the road. They got all this salary cap issues every single year, and they can't add players. They're not hitting on the draft right now. They don't have a quarterback. They're screwed. So that's great news for us. Bad news for them. Good news for Atlanta. Good news for Tampa. Bad news for the Saints. The Panthers, at the very least moving forward, should not be in the basement of the NFC South. It should be the Saints, who are going to have probably the next 2 years, kind of like what you saw in Atlanta when Terry Fontenot went there to be the GM and they had Arthur Smith. They just had to eat the cap issues for the first couple of seasons. Then they tried to turn it around. Didn't work out. Now Raheem Morris is there and things are working out for them with Terry Fontenot's GM. That's what the Saints are going to have to do. But we don't care about the Saints. We're not here to talk about the Saints, even though I just talked about the Saints. We're here to laugh at the Saints and talk about how the Panthers beat the Saints, even though the Panthers just got thoroughly outgained and should not have won that game based off of just historical precedent. But they did, because the Saints could not convert in the red zone. The Panthers did. 2 for 4 in the red zone. New Orleans, 3 for 3, Carolina. And that was the story of the game, as Carolina gets a 23-22 win against the Saints, and Dennis Allen is no longer their head coach. All right. Keys of victory, number 1, open up the offense. They did not do that at all. I was very frustrated, especially with third down play calling. I think a lot of y'all were also frustrated. I charted it 3rd and 5. That was the first down they had, or third down they had. It was a throw behind the line of scrimmage to Miles Sanders for a loss of 7. What the hell was that? 3rd and 6, inside zone run to Miles Sanders in Saints territory. Saints were bringing a blitz. That did not work out. Another one of the what the hell was that? 3rd and 5, David Moore on a dig right over the middle for a first down. Worked out. Bryce Young on time, delivered the ball, first down. Maybe you would think they would try to do it again on the next 3rd down. 3rd and 7, swing route to Jalen Coker for a first down. Good blocking. Coker makes some men miss. Almost has a great sideline toe tap to be able to get in there and score a touchdown. Just too short, but still great play by him. 3rd and 2, there's a quick throw to the flat that Xavier Lee get. He gets blown up by Alontae Taylor, gets hurt on the play, able to return, fortunately. Another 3rd and 7, there's a drop back by Bryce Young, but he was sacked. It didn't look like there's any quick developing routes, so it seemed at least they were trying to throw the ball down the field past the sticks. Good to see there. Chase Young beat Brady Christensen pretty badly on that play. There's a 3rd and 4. Was a slant to JT Sanders for a first down. That was nice to see. 3rd and 15, where they did a nice surrender, dump off to Miles Sanders on a screen. Every call on that drive was a screen to Chuba Hubbard, lost yardage, screen to Xavier Legette, bad throw by Bryce Young. Canales, who did not need to watch the film on that play, said that had it been thrown accurately, they had something there. Again, he can answer that, but typically can't tell us because he's got to watch the film. And in that 3rd down call where it did not work out, that led to some boo birds. 3rd and 6, Bryce Young got pressured, had to throw it away. Smart decision. Then 3rd and 10, had to cut it loose. Does over the middle, Xavier Legette, and that helps set up the Carolina Panthers to win that game, going up 23-22 and winning. So 3rd down play calling left a lot to be desired. Play calling overall left a lot to be desired. And Dave Canales did say that he's got to evaluate things and he's got to do a better job. And I appreciate his willingness to say that. But just do it, man, because Sunday was kind of embarrassing still to not open up the offense for a quarterback who clearly is gaining confidence and his teammates can see it. So why don't you show confidence in him as well? Maybe he'll do that moving forward. That is if Bryce Young continues to start. Number 2, they had to cut down on mistakes on offense. We saw a lot of penalties from the offensive line and from Bryce Young and his turnovers the week before in that loss against Denver. Only 3 penalties on offense on Sunday. Had an illegal formation penalty on Taylor Moton on that failed 3rd and 5 where they threw it out to Miles Sanders behind the line of scrimmage. So it didn't really matter. There's a false start on Brady Christensen on that touchdown drive. The Saints, bad punt. Panthers got the ball at the 40, and then 1st down and 10, false start. So Brady got to be better. Can't have that happening. Carolina overcomes, gets a touchdown on that drive, fortunately. Then there was a delay of game. This is not, I mean, this was a penalty. I don't really count this one as a penalty, as Carolina was trying to get the Saints to jump off sides. It's 4th and 2. They're at the Saints 42. I hated this decision from Dave Canales. Why not go for it? Again, you're 1-7 at the time. You have nothing to lose. If you want to be a playoff team, you got to win 9 straight games, buddy. Why are you not going for it in that situation? Run the ball with Chuba Hubbard. Get Bryce Young out of the pocket. Do something. Run another screen, for Christ's sake. I would rather see you do that than punt the ball. Now, it worked out to where the Saints were back by their goal line, didn't move the ball, had the punt, back to Carolina. Carolina got a short field because there was a penalty, and they got the ball at the 28, but then they went -2 yards, had to kick a 48-yard field goal. So it worked out in that way, I suppose. But come on, that's just cowardice. Go for it. You're bad. Why not? There's nothing to lose other than the game. You already lost 7 of them. And then there was a delay of game penalty on a 2-point try. That's just unacceptable. Cannot happen. Be happy you went up, but get the play call in. Be prepared. Don't have that happen. I don't know whether it's on Dave, whether it's on Bryce. But hate to see that. And then the other mistakes that we saw, Xavier Legette stripped on that interception. Come on, man. And then David Moore dropped a touchdown. That was a dime from Bryce Young. And I know Jay Feely was trying to say, oh, Bryce Young's got to throw it out further. No, dude. Watching in real time, he dropped it. And in replay, Feely was like, oh, wait, no, he should have caught that ball. Yeah, should have caught that ball and walked right into the end zone. So cut down on mistakes, penalty-wise, offensively. But then those just 2 drops and just those 2 plays, that hurts to see because that should not have been a turnover with Legette. That should have been a touchdown for David Moore. And then number 3, they had to get more takeaways. Did not have a takeaway. And matter of fact, this is from CBS Sports. Panthers are the first team in the Super Bowl era to win a game with under 250 total yards gained, 0 takeaways, and 425-plus total yards allowed. In your face, Saints. Like, come on, man. How embarrassing that is. And that's why Dennis Allen's out of a job. Not celebrating that, not trying to laugh at that, because I do feel bad for the guy as much as you can. I know a lot of y'all just can't ever get your minds around feeling bad for a millionaire because your life hasn't gone the way you want it to go. That's on you. But damn, dude, that's what happened. Really, New Orleans? Really? And then Cam Jordan's out here on Twitter trying to clown the Panthers, and Jason Horn's like, don't we have the same record as y'all? And then asking, who's in last place now? I think that was Lonnie Johnson Jr., who was a Saint last year, asking, so who's in last? Is it you or is it us? Doesn't matter because the Panthers are 2-7 and the Saints are 2-7. The Saints just had one of the most embarrassing losses in franchise history. A team they beat 47-10. They went out there, outgained them, didn't lose a turnover battle, and lost that game. Oh, buddy, that's hilarious. All right, those are the keys to victory. We'll review them on Tuesdays and talk about them on Fridays every single game week here on Locked On Panthers. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where tomorrow should be back answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. We'll see what the Panthers decide to do at the deadline. If they do make multiple moves, that may likely take precedent over what we would talk about as far as your questions, but send them in anyways, because I likely will get to them at some point in time, whether via DMs or here on the show. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. I will be in Munich when you watch or hear this, or at least be in the air. So I'll talk to y'all on Wednesday and cannot wait to see what the Panthers do or don't do and answer your questions on the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers.